How are you doing, everyone? Welcome to CJ Scott. This is your host, CJ Atemo, hoping that you are well and in good health. Well, you know the drill. First of all, subscribe to our YouTube channel, CJ Atemo, and then follow also on social media. It's CJ Scott Official on Instagram, CJ Scott on Facebook, CJ Scott 1. I hope I got that right for Twitter as well. And I need you to share the stream, host a watch party, invite your friends, tag anyone that you know needs to be here right now. And we also need to know that you're here. So please be free to comment, to share, to like, and we need to hear your thoughts. As we always say, when we set up the court, we set up the jury, but the verdict remains with you. So today is no exception. I've got a jury of 3. 2 gentlemen and 1 lady. The lady shares with me the color theme today. She's not new to us, but the 2 gentlemen are, though one of them is not new to most people's faces because he has been involved in matters of youth and empowerment over and over the years, from a point where he was a student leader at Daystar University, and he's been in the media spaces a lot. So we'll only have probably one new face to bring to us, but glad to have Kevin Osido over here. Kevin, you've been involved in a lot of matters youth for over the years, man.
Sure.
And I was asking him just before we set up, I asked, are you in any political party?
Well, I am in the People's Political Party. As it is right now, the kind of work that I do, engaging with county governments through what we call the County Governance Watch, really is more or less like the people's space, where then things that cannot be able to be discussed at the political party because of the nature of our politics in this country. Looking at the ownership of political parties, we know who owns these parties. Looking at decision-making processes, we know how difficult it is for youth, women, and persons with disabilities to make decisions in these political parties. And so maybe one time, Rev, God willing, we may just come up with a political party that might top all these others.
And then I've got Maureen Otieno. It's not the first time that she's here. Maureen, it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And I know that you're also involved in governance as well. Yeah.
Well, a bulk of my work is on youth-related matters in the context of social inclusion. And I also I do a concur with him when it comes to having the youth on board. It's not as linear as we expect, strict linear as we expected. There's a lot of dynamics that actually are involved within the process. So I'm looking forward. Yes, there's a lot that can be done.
All right. Yes. And then we've got new to the CJ Scott, that is Mark Kiptoo. Mark, it's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Hoping that by the time we are done, we'll be hearing what your direction is in matters. But you see, I want to start with something that, Kevin, I want to start with you because you have been involved in matters of leadership. And you and many of the young leaders, young thought leaders who I interact with are very skeptical about political processes.
Yeah.
That every time you meet these young people who want to be involved in matters of leadership and direction, they will be shying off from the political, either the camps or something. They just want to hang in between there. But then eventually, we start complaining about how politics is run in this country. Why are the young people afraid of taking the bulls by the horn?
It's partly because of the transitional definition of youth.
Okay.
And our Constitution of Kenya 2010 has made it much more easier and closer to the people. And Article 267J defines youth.
Right.
In the Republic of Kenya, of course, there are other different conventional definitions by the UN, the African Union, the World Bank, UNESCO, among several others. But for the sake of Kenya, it is anyone who has attained a minimum age of 18 years and does not attain the maximum age of 35 years. So between 18 to 35, you are really a young person. But then the second...
Man, I'm young, but I'm not in the
I know, and you see that's partly why then the challenge then evolves around that, because we have people who are 67, 54, and plus, many who still say we are youth or youthful.
Right.
And now that puts the young person, which presents the second issue about youth definition in this country, which is really about what are these issues that excite young people.
Right.
The manner in which politics in Kenya is done is not exciting to the youth. Okay. One is the manner in which mobilization is done. The youth is only given the space to, stand at the fence and serve as either a security guard, a bouncer somewhere, or hanging on those V8s that we see these politicians really being ferried in. But if you move into the political party, the spaces where the decisions are being made, the youth are not there. So that therefore presents the opportunity, in my view, for young people to begin to organize and probably even wake up very early in the morning before the political party leaders wake up, because those people don't sleep well. Right. By virtue of the work that I do, we interact a lot with these politicians, both at national and county levels, because they influence and inform a lot of decisions that are made in this country. Right. So it therefore means that the young people need to identify what really excites them and what their issues are. Right. And that has been made much more easier to the youth because this year the president launched the Kenya National Youth Development Policy 2019, right, which has been such a long-term process, borrowing from past experiences and work that government has been doing. And then the last time we had such a policy was in 2006. Right. Now, this policy has broken down the issues of young people, not just at the national level, but also at the county level, and much more fundamentally at the ward level, which is the most central part where governance is taking place because of our county governments. Yeah. Now, it therefore means that young people need to stop looking at politics as the only thing that we have to be identified with and be organized around to make a difference. Okay. As a student leader, as a youth leader within your church, as a boda rider within your village, you can actually begin to organize people and present positions that can be able to make change and a difference at that particular level. Now, as I finish, so that then my other co-panelists can come in, it therefore means that, Trev, as we move even towards creating change into this country, that boda person can be able to be elected, not necessarily because you are in a political party, but even as an independent candidate, because the electorate need to begin to identify issues and people who speak for them. And that is not what we are seeing in the conventional kind of political leadership in this country today.
When you talk about that, and I'm just thinking, I was looking at something that in January this year, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics said that last year 840,000 jobs were created. That in 2019, that 840,000 jobs were created. Mark, did you feel that?
Well, I mean, again, there was a statement by the central bank governor when he said that economic growth is just on paper.
Right.
It's just in, government reports. But when you look really whether it is tangible, that people can feel that growth or that job creation that they're talking about, the reality is that people lost jobs. No jobs were created, at least in the formal sectors. So, and one of the things that drives job creation in this country is the informal sector.
Right.
The challenge again is that they do not have a formal way of documenting job growth in the informal sector. So it is challenging even to really, put two together to say that report is really true.
Okay. When you talk about the informal sector, and Kevin is talking about, the border person should be able to just organize themselves. I cannot go past the wheelbarrow economy. No, I've got to bring it in. I can't go past it because in 2011, and this is not. Our discussion is not even towards a particular direction, but in 2011, there was something, Kazi kwa Vijana, which then there are people who said, Kazi kwa Vijana, pesa kwa wazee. I remember there was a discussion by the deputy president then said, we need the young people to be economically empowered, technologically. We shouldn't be giving them the shovels to go and dig the trenches. We should not be sending them back there because that's very backward. Yeah. We are now in 2020. 9 years down the line, we are now at a place where young people will be given the wheelbarrows and stuff. Maureen, where are we going? Is the problem with us? Is it with them?
Quite interestingly, I recently evaluated a project in line with what you're sharing, and I never had an appreciation for kazi kwa vijana, because I had the same perspective of, I mean, when you're driving along anywhere, Jogoo Road, anywhere, just name it, you see young guys slashing, cleaning up the drainages. Until I evaluated a project in Nakuru in August. And I discovered that 300, that 400 is a lifeline for an entire family. Is a lifeline for an entire family. And I got to interview quite a number of the youth who were there, and most of them, through Kazi kwa Vijana, would show up maybe at the chiefs. And of course, the process of getting into that roster is not straight, you know. It's just something else. Yeah. And the moment you're on the roster for showing up for work, it doesn't guarantee you that you're going to be paid.
Okay.
But what happens is that I also must applaud. It may seem as a very interesting project. I think the challenge is the process evaluation. The challenge is what steps are they taking to make sure that it's sustainable and that it actually impacts the lives of a beneficiaries, being the youth. But I noticed that for those who have the 300, the 400, and I speak for especially young girls, it changes everything. That is diapers, that is pads.
Right.
But now when it comes to the actual payment, was it 2 weeks back in Mombasa, they were protesting that they had not been paid for Kazi kwa Vijana. You see? So I think just to mention that it does help, but the delivery and the whole project, cascading of a project may need some extra work.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just to make an addition, we need to also distinguish. You know, we are doing COVID-19.
Right.
And as part of the economic stimulus packages that the government mentioned is what is called Kazi Mtaani, which is supposed to safeguard young people. And from Rev's introduction, Kazi kwa Vijana was the Nusu Mukate government project, which was supposed to also do a similar thing.
Yeah.
And in order that when that government was put in office, they had these very major programs for the youth, which from government economic analysis had indicated that it would probably take much more time for Kenyans to begin to accrue interests for young people, particularly towards youth empowerment, employment creation, and job creation for young people. And that was because every year in this country, Kenya churns out more than 1.4 million young people into the job market. These are people who are graduating from universities, TVETs, and now we have more than, I think, 600 TVETs all over the country that are supposed to train young people and then churn them out to where? And if we do not consider very clear value additional or rather value addition programs, particularly insofar as absorbing these young people, then we might begin to think about the vices that are going to accrue into our societies and communities. So the number of young people are going to be recruited into violent extremist organizations or groups. The number of young people are going to join gangs, who are just going to be breaking into people's homes and stealing is going to be so enormous. So in the wisdom of His Excellency the President, he said, we can't have young people in the houses for 8 months. Right. And they are not doing anything because of COVID-19. So government put in some huge chunk of money, and the easiest way for that to be done is to have young people go out there and slash. Now that is good, but to a very greater extent, it is very abnormal in my view. Because today, and because you mentioned the wheelbarrow economics, we can't be talking wheelbarrows in 2020 when young people are innovating every single day. Yeah. We can't be talking wheelbarrows in 2020 when the youth are engaging with the Safaricoms of this world to innovate and come up with M-Pesa. Right. Young people are creating softwares every single day. And if you are probably keen about youth demographics, global youth demographics, look at what's happening in Rwanda. You don't see young people going to slash. Government is putting in place policies that are safeguarding the interest of the youth 4 years when they graduate. In Kenya, we are told about CBC, which is supposed to be curriculum-based, competency-based curriculum to be able to build a holistic human being. But by the time you do your exams, the exam one is not in tandem with what you are learning in school, and it does not even prepare you for the job market. Right. So I think there's a lot of work that we need to do insofar as helping our government to effect the policies. And that's why Maureen is saying that the entry into this particular thing we are calling kazi mtaani even is very difficult. It's really still reserved for the who is who's. Right. And that's why in some areas, like in Nairobi, which was part of the pilot counties, young people still find themselves having to wait for a long time to be paid because priority is being given to people who are put into the program, who knows the who is who's. Yes. And when they go for the payment, the location, the system that is being used cannot pick the location. So the location is reading Turkana when the person is supposed to be in Nairobi. And so I think as we talk about youth empowerment, there is a lot that government needs to learn from young people and not necessarily look at the youth as a problem. Because if we do that, then I think that the intergenerational learnings and even mentorship issues will not be adding value to the lives of the youth in this country.
And maybe, sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe just to weigh in on the same, that also applies within the agriculture sector.
Right.
Because there's been a lot of work in trying to make agriculture fun, trying to roll more of the youth into the agricultural space. There's a lot of funding and a lot of money in the agricultural space. But when you look at what we call the value chain, where you have input, producers, marketers, and traders, you discover that the youth would rather be, the volatility of the youth cannot place them in the agricultural space for too long. Yet, there's a lot of potential. So, from some of the views that we've been having, some projects we've been working on, you notice that the youth are at the tail end, at the border phase. Okay. Because it's transport, it's quick money. So before any project is actually rolled out, you need to understand the beneficiaries' behavioral patterns.
All right.
What do they want to, where do they want to stand? Because even with the youth, you want to have quick money. That's it. It's quick money, isn't it?
Yeah.
So those are some of the dynamics you need to understand. You don't have, I'll speak well, I still can be in that bracket. Slashing the whole day. And when you look at the remuneration and how long it takes, it demotivates them. So that's how you end up having a huge margin, more numbers.
All right.
Yes. So
and you know, as you say that, so you preempted what I was going to ask, and I want Mark, to just weigh in on it. Are the young people ready for what would be more like a cultural shift? Because Kevin is talking about, the people just laying down infrastructure, systems that are sustainable, that would empower people for generations. And then Maureen raises the thing of the young people want quick money. Do you think that the young people are prepared to have the cultural shift of feeling like we can sacrifice for now so that we are not the people that are always just given the 300 and the 400 and 500 to feel good now, but we want something that in the next 3 to 4, 5 years is going to mean more to us than now?
The answer is yes and no, because first of all,
those are two answers.
Yes. When we look at some of these interventions, for example, like the kazi mtaani, these are short-term government interventions that serve a specific purpose for a specific period of time.
Right.
But we must also bear in mind that even before COVID, the economy was bad.
Right.
There were thousands, if not millions, of young people who were out there with nothing to do. Such that even with these short-term interventions, really, it's not addressing the bigger problem.
Okay.
Which to me really is failure in government policy making that would seek to address long-term solutions to challenges affecting young people. Whether the young people are ready, yes, they are ready, because we have a lot of young people that are coming out of universities. They are skilled, they have the knowledge. The challenge is, number one, again, they are not employable because there is a mismatch between the market skills and what is coming out from the school system. So we have a systemic problem with the education system that does not address the employability of young people. And you know, the mindset that young people come out with from college and universities that I'm going to look for a job.
Yeah.
So that's the first challenge. So that tells you, number one, they are not ready on that front. However, again, as Maureen said, that if you look at certain spaces like agriculture, which is the key or the driver of economic growth in this country, there's huge potential. But the challenge again is that government is not creating that enabling environment that allows young people to look at agriculture as something that they can get into. Now, case in point is that if you look at financing mechanisms around agriculture, the only government institution that has been doing that is the Agricultural Finance Corporation, which is almost bankrupt.
Okay.
Now, we are still in the traditional method of doing financing, which in my view is outdated, because you can't just rely on giving out loans, because number one, that money is not there and people may not have the ability to repay. So I think in terms of preparing young people to really get into these spaces is to be more innovative when it comes to issues of financing. So for example, I know of certain organizations like Mercy Corps that they have created certain innovative, even International Finance Corporation, we have the IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development. They have created very innovative financing mechanisms that would allow young people to step into these agricultural spaces and tap that financing. For example, someone would be given credit in terms of farm inputs instead of being given cash. And they only pay back once they have produced crop, they have sold it, now they can pay back. So I think...
Not like, that's not like higher education loans, but
no,
where you're supposed to pay before you get a job.
And you're even paying interest when you're being charged interest.
And penalties.
And penalties. So in my view, really, I think that number one, young people, they are not ready in terms of mindset when they come out. I think we should do more to have an open mindset when we leave universities and colleges.
As you talk about that, you know, there's the other thing that I was thinking about, which is, are we overemphasizing the wrong thing, which would be university education? And should we also have a shift to let people know that you don't have to go to university, you can go to the tertiary colleges that would equip you with skill? Because then somebody would not necessarily feel like I have to go and get a degree, but when they come out with that degree, they don't have skills for life, yet probably the skills they needed in a polytechnic. Should we be re-engineering that kind of thought and not feel like because you went to a polytechnic, you are less? We should be looking at skill acquisition, Kevin.
Precisely so, I agree with you in total. And if you look at, for instance, what we used to have in this country called the polytechnics, like Kisumu Polytechnic, Kenya Polytechnic is now a university, Mombasa Polytechnic is now a university. And as that is happening, government is continuously opening technical and vocational educational training centers almost across the country. Now the challenge with that is that we haven't done two things. One is investing in the human resource, which is supposed to be people who are available and ready to impact these knowledge, skills, and just innovative ways of helping young people to really learn about my environment. You know, so much so that if I fail to get a job because I trained as a doctor, or I trained as a lawyer, or I trained as a teacher, what else is it that I can be able to do? I have friends in almost every corner of this country who are graduates. And because we began by talking about boda, who are actually riding bodas, they're riding these motorbikes. And these are people who have degrees. Some of them are very highly qualified, you know. It means that there is a problem that needs to be dealt with. The second thing that we have failed to do is therefore to engage with the mindset of the youth. And as you rightfully said, is to help young people understand that you're not going into a TVET because you failed. You're not going into this low-class educational institution because you were not good, your IQ was low at the university. No, that's really not what it's supposed to be. It is supposed to give you an opportunity to have life skills,
right,
to be able to engage with people, because we have, and I am an employer from where I work in every day.
Yeah.
We have young people who are very highly qualified, but they cannot just prepare for an interview. So they lose jobs every single day.
Yeah.
They don't know how to respond to simple questions like, please tell us about yourself, you know. And so the people who are considered to be low IQ'd, who are in TVETs and tertiary institutions, will just boldly walk into an employment area and say, you know, I've been passing here every day and I've noted a gap, which I have skills that I can be able to fill in. I know you guys have very many computers, but why are some of them in the store? I can actually come and help you fix them so that you don't have to be buying new ones. So if government can just take a back step and think through how we do our programs, in terms of government investing resources in certain programs, and there are so many of them, 30% youth access to government procurement opportunities, which is a government directive that young people need to at least get 30% of tenders, both national and county levels. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, YEDEF, the people who are actually beneficiaries of these funds are not young people. Yeah. You go to Wezo Fund, the people who are the beneficiaries are not young people. It means that government has taken note of the problem, rather of the gap, which is that we are churning very many young people into the job market, but the gap is not being filled because we have failed to, one, listen and tailor-make these programs to be able to fit the youth, and then engage with the educational institutions to actually prepare the youth to deal with filling in these gaps. Because failure to do that, I think we will have a country where maybe young people will just be waiting for jobs at home, yet those jobs are not there because there will be no one creating employment opportunities.
I want to raise an issue. I feel, in my view, I feel that there's a certain stereotyping as well when it comes to young people and the programs that are churned out. Because if you look at all of these programs, they seem to target a particular class of the young people. So that even just about the young people, these programs will either be looking at people in Kibera, in Mathare or something. There are other people sitting over here, you're young people, but most of these programs will not target you.
Yeah.
Because you will not be enticed to come and be told, take a motorbike or take a bicycle and start something, or a wheelbarrow or something. It will not entice you. So there is this particular stereotyping that all young people are idle. They're just people for, good enough only for manual or manual jobs or something. Don't you think that is part of our problem as well? That when interventions are brought, they're brought to target a particular kind of people. And nothing is coming to people like yourself who would have started a company, who would have, birthed a whole enterprise. And you think that stereotyping works against young people as well?
Well, I do agree to some extent that it does work in some way. It actually excludes some people. I'll give, for example, ways of
You had to use that word.
Yes.
You're a governance person. You had to find a way to use that word.
To use the word of yes, in some way, because I'll give you an example. When you look at previously how Uwezo Fund was rolled out, Uwezo Fund would give for the youth to be involved in the process of accessing the funds. Yeah. I think it also applies for Youth Enterprise Fund, though I stand corrected. You have to be in a group.
Yeah.
So the group has to be in existence for 6 months. And then when you have a group that's been in existence for 6 months and has demonstrated capacity to save, then you are allowed to borrow a certain amount of money. But here's the catch. The amount of money to be borrowed is 100,000. And we are 10 of us.
15 is a minimum.
15 minimum, eh? Yeah. We're 15 and it's 100,000.
Yeah, and if you are an individual, your bank account has to read not less than $1 million.
$1 million. Yeah. So with that 100,000, I've been on the waiting list for 6 months. We want to do this thing in January. Yeah. When we get the money, we split the money and we... That is what happens. Ideally, that is what happens. So when the government decided to reduce the tranches, actually it doesn't help. It makes more of the youth, because again, also you need to understand the systems of, if it's 3, and then maybe there are 6 men. Men don't meet to discuss money for chamas. I don't know. Do you guys need to sit down and talk about money?
Like, seriously?
Yes. As women, that's why women thrive within these enterprise development funds. Because we meet on Mondays, sawa, weka mia yako, kuku yako, put whatever you have on the table, isn't it?
Right.
We're able to save because I know at the end of it all, if I save, if something happens and my husband is not able to pay fee, my children will go to school.
All right.
So the youth don't have that mentality of the whole savings, the dynamics. We've been saving for 6 months, isn't it? So it does, just to answer your question, it ostracizes some. You have your company, you needed 500,000. Then I'm giving you 100. I think you'll patch yourself with Jipe Pole, with that 100.
And you see, for me, Maureen, why I raise that question is, for example, if yourself, if Kevin, if Mark needed this money and even that money is given, we don't make noise about that. So the stereotyping for me begins with the perceptions that are created.
Yes.
That the only available opportunities for young people are these ones of Kazi Mtaani, Kazi kwa Vijana, all these menial jobs. These are the programs for young people. If you're sitting here, you're an innovator, probably you don't lack food, but you just need capital pumped into what you're doing. You begin to feel there's no inclusivity for you in that, because the only thing that the government or policymakers want to address are the guys who are down there. Which then brings me to the point of, even those programs are not supposed to really empower these guys. You give them enough to keep them needing you.
Yeah, pacify them.
So that tomorrow, when you need them for politics, they are available, because they have not been empowered. They have not moved into a place of self-reliance and sustainability, Mark.
And I think also it's beyond that, because I think also the government is trying to deal with a security risk. Because you can't have 3 million, 5 million young people in our streets who have nothing to do and they are desperate.
Don't you think that if you created jobs, they wouldn't need to be on the street?
Now, in my view, in as much as the government is creating these short-term interventions, it's not just about putting money into people's pockets.
Right.
The government is also thinking about how do we address the security challenge that these young people who are desperate, who are literally at the bottom of the food chain, pose to national security. So actually, I think that is the main driver of these interventions.
But maybe sorry, go ahead.
Maureen is not in agreement with you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's one view that I have. But really, yes, to be honest, I think it's not adequate.
I think what you're saying, from your perspective, you are right that probably it would alleviate insecurity issues, but I don't think that is their intention.
It could be part of their intention, because they're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They're trying to create,
why not just create this welfare system that other countries have, where every month you receive a stipend in your account? Then, there's the element also of dignity. Like, you bring me to clean up those trenches somewhere, probably in Mukuru. If I keep on doing that every day, there's something that also happens to me. There's something that also happens to me, how I look at myself, how I begin to view myself. And that is where sometimes then you end up with this thing boomeranging, because even somebody who could have done more in society begins to look at themselves as not deserving more. And they just begin to slide into a certain level of expectations, Maureen. Yeah.
I think just to weigh in on the same, he's brought in an important perspective about security.
Yeah.
Recently, I went to a certain part of the community, and for the first time in my life, I was scared. For the first time in my life, I felt scared. And when they were talking about the 2 dimensions that you brought about, that having this kazi kwa mtaani, whether you're slashing, that person is better off getting that 300 than waiting for you at the entrance of your estate. Because when I was staying there, I would hear the women say, "Umona tumechelewa, we are late. So tomorrow morning, we have to leave all 5 of us." Because during COVID time, a lot of people lost their jobs.
Right.
So within some certain locations, it applies. But I also want to talk about the dignity and the worth of the job. There are people in Europe and in America who show up to clean the road, isn't it? But they live in good houses. They eat good food. They have coupons. Right. You can still live a dignified life. Let's dignify the work that we give the youth to do.
Right.
Let's have it with dignity and worth such that you say, yes, nenda kosha Thika Road.
Yeah.
But when you come back home, at the end of it all, whether you washed Thika Road or you went and reported and flew a plane, and we're all eating, aren't we okay? We're all studying in good schools. We're all having bacon and butter.
Yeah.
We're fine. Dignify the job that you're going to roll out so that tomorrow it's me who will be like, hey, nyewe, my money has not come, but if I slash, nikifagia hapa, I'm proud of what I'm doing.
Right,
you know? But as you said, it caps your capacity to think big.
Yeah.
Some of these jobs cap your capacity and they retain you within a certain space of being influenced politically and within the election spaces. Because there are places, I tell you, if you go and you mention some different names within our political spaces, you die an early death.
Kevin, and as we wind up, because we have been added time twice, so as we wind up,
I think that two things. One is policy and planning. Okay. And when we began this, you brought in the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics to be able to therefore use data to inform our planning. And I know that government is doing that, and that is why partly His Excellency the President came up with the Big Four.
Right.
But you see, out of the Big Four, we are talking about food security and then agriculture, not to mention universal health care and housing. Manufacturing is not helping many young people.
Right.
Because you go to the counties, and I have been to almost, I think, over 40 counties in this country. The avenues that used to provide massive employment, for instance, you go to Mumias and the sugar factory is dead.
Yeah.
You go to Nyanza, Awendo areas, Sony Sugar is dead.
Yeah.
You go to Kisumu, Kikomi is dead.
Right.
You go to Kitui, we were told about Kikotech, that in fact would be producing 500,000 masks every week. We can't even see any. And so I think that as government is planning and using data to be able to plan, we need to also invest at the counties, and particularly in massive economic drivers that can be able to then absorb young people at that particular level. So if you go to Murang'a, for example, and that area is good in milk productivity, or rather milk production, why don't we invest in infrastructure that can be able to have these young people, deliver milk? And so we empower them, and I think he gave us a very good analysis of, rather exegesis of organizations that are supporting young people at different levels. Right. And then organize these youth into circles or networks, where then, as Maureen was saying, that women are good in money and all these processes, we come up with our own youth organizational constitutions that says, for every half a liter that you produce and you send to the factory, you bring in 50 shillings. And that is put in this circle. And then government or the county government can say, if you have 50,000 shillings, we give you a matching fund, which is supposed to also boost and bolster whatever programs that you are having at this particular level. Right. Because then it means that a lot of our interventions have been left to the national government, and those are not as responsive to very many young people. Right. The second thing, which I think is also important, is that initially, we had Schedule 4 and functions for national and county governments. The youth function was lying. In fact, it had been domiciled at the national level, whereas a lot of youth generation and employment creation avenues are actually at the county level. Right. So the National Youth Development Policy for 2019 has now also given an avenue for county governments to begin with their own working with their own youth organizations at that particular level, to also ensure that young people are empowered and that counties invest in massive economic stimulus packages at that level to absorb the growing number of youth.
All right. Yeah. All right. Maureen.
Well, maybe just as thank you for that. I think also is to talk about, first things first to a government is to resist the urge to politicize youth empowerment.
Okay.
In that youth empowerment should not be it's political in every way, but think of the lives we're changing, because youth empowerment is about creating opportunities that improve livelihoods.
Right.
Second is that it's very, very important for, it's one thing to equip me in TVET for me to be a good tailor, but yet it's another for me to know that I will actually get a job. Job creation and market linkages is the hugest gap that this country has.
Okay.
So that is one thing that needs this. We need clear strategies on market linkages and youth and job creation. Because I'll give you a little example where I saw in Marsabit, half of the goats are bought in Marsabit. Yeah. Is taken to Ethiopia for fattening, ends up in the Middle East. The same goat was 3,000 in the Middle East during Eid. Is bought at $200. Same goat.
Right.
So it talks about market linkages. Right. I want to produce my yogurt and know that I will end up at Carrefour.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that at the end of it all help me see the money.
Yeah.
and end up creating those linkages that allow us that I won't stay with my shampoo.
Right, right.
I will get market for my shampoo. So that is something else that the government needs to have clear strategies about.
And even value addition, so that then if we have institutions like KEBS, Kenya Bureau of Standards, that is supposed to check what is sellable, what is useless, and even for export purposes.
Yeah.
If there are products that Kenyan youth are producing that cannot meet the market value, let institutions like KEBS help in value addition. So that then when these things get to the level of export, they should not be stopped at the airport, because you have invested a lot of money in producing it, and then you even have your own means of transport up to the point of transportation to the airport, and then you are told, sorry, we are looking for 20 kgs, yours is only 18. So why can't government work with these young people to be able to help in job value addition and market linkages, and then bring in the money into the pockets?
All right. Mark, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in the words of Miguna, I think...
I've never heard anybody quote that.
He kept saying that we need to organize and mobilize, don't just sit there.
Yeah.
And I think really young people don't need to wait for politicians to organize them and to mobilize them for certain political agendas. I think young people can take charge of their own destinies, their own choices. They can organize themselves around causes that they believe in, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's causes for social justice. They can organize themselves, even at the lowest level, as he said, at the ward level. And then they start building their voice. Because unless the young people build their own voices, no one will give them a voice.
All right, so, all right. Well, I'll end it up with just that unless the young people build up their voices, nobody will give them a voice. I hope that you have had a great interaction with us, such an amazing panel, an amazing and enlightening discussion with Kevin Osido, Maureen Otieno, and Mark Kiptoo right here on CJ Scott. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on Instagram at CJ Scott Official, CJ Scott 1 on YouTube, on Twitter, and CJ Scott on Facebook. You could also follow me, CJ Atemo, on every platform, that is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course on YouTube. Till the next time, we'll see you.